page. Well, I played with a new toy. I'm trying to, let's see if we can get it to work here. It participated the other day. That's interesting. So what we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to talk about pornography and the effects that hey, y'all hear that? That's pretty good. Okay, here we go. We're working now. We're cooking with gas. Everybody see that? Sorry, I can't hook my phone up to the projector, so I keep it kind of low. Let me turn me up just a little bit more. Can everybody hear me all right? Okay. So, as we talk about pornography, everybody knows that's a pretty bad thing, right? I hope so. I want to pass out. These are our, tell you what, can you just swing them around? We'll pass out personal hindrance inventory form. And this is what we use when we go through deliverance, and Dr. Fent's taught about it, or taught off of it several times. And what I can say from being here before we started using that, before Dr. Fent brought the process to us, and compared to how it's gone since the history form, it's hands down so much better. We've become efficient because now we're not fishing in the dark. Now we can see everything we're doing. It's kind of like it's almost like we're poaching now. But as we're thinking about pornography, I wanted to ask, what would be spirits off the top of your head? What would be a spirit that would come in with pornography? Just lust? Okay. Let's see. I can't spell, y'all. Forgive me. All right, we got lust. All right, what's another one? Got to talk loud. I can't hear you. Fornication? Okay, fornication. That's pretty good there. Adultery. Okay, fornication, adultery. What else? Let me come closer to you. Anger? Like anger? Okay, that's pretty good. Did you read my notes? All right. Shame. That's a good one. Oh. All right, guilt and shame. Anything else? Say it louder. Sexual immorality. Okay. Well, that one ain't got a cap on it. Let's see. That one's gone. Sexual immorality. That's pretty good too. Sexual deviancy. What about like masturbation? That's a good one. Let's see if this one will work. No, that one, you can tell that one's dry. Okay. Masturbation. How about, what's that? Bitterness. Yeah. Okay. So think about, what about incubus? Everybody ever heard of incubus? Now, I'm not even going to talk about incubus tonight. That's one I typically will talk about. That's we talk to somebody that's when they go through a lot of the sexual things on their inventory list. That's something that will come to them at night. Have sex with them, things like that. And there's also that's a male version. There's a female version called succubus. Also look for that's what I'm talking about. Also look for like a spirit husband or spirit wife. That's something that when you see a marriage and it's constant button heads, can't see them. There's no harmony. You look for a spirit husband or spirit wife because it claims the candidate as its sexual property. And so it's just like you with your husband or whatever, your wife, that they're mine, they belong to me. I'm gonna be mad if you get jealousy. What about so we talked about anger, bitterness, rage, murder. What about murder? These are things I never really thought of until about a week or two ago. I would have never correlated the two together with murder and things like that. So we're going to kind of get into this stuff as we progress here. if I can change my slides. It's doing it a little different than it did. Y'all like my graphics? Okay, so I pulled some statistics off the internet about pornography. 12% of the websites on the internet are pornographic. That's a lot when you consider that that's 24,644,172 sites that are just pornographic. I made the mistake one time of looking up. I was trying to find out information about our White House. Or we got somebody laughed about it too, because they apparently have done that too. When you look for that, you need to look under .gov, and that will take you to the government site. You don't want to go to the .com version. That's not good. Every second, $3,075.64 is being spent on pornography. 28,258 internet users are viewing porn. That's it at any given time. 40 million Americans are regular visitors to porn websites. 40 million Americans. My Lord. 1 in 3 viewers of porn are women. 70% of men aged 18 to 24 visit porn sites in a typical month. 70%. So that's 7 out of 10 are checking out a porn website. I mean, think about that. Next time you're in church. You know what I mean? I mean, don't look at me. I ain't looking at it. Let's see. In the United States, internet porn pulls in $2.84 billion per year. The entire worldwide industry is worth $4.9 billion. So we pull in a little over half of it. Just the United States. That's crazy, y'all. 2.5 billion emails per day are pornographic. That's a lot of emails. 25% of all search engine requests are pornography related. That's 68 million searches a day. Wow. So you know, I'm talking about this because this is something that's in your home. It's in phones. It's so much easier now. I was watching a video yesterday, and a guy was talking about. He said, you know, when I was a kid, he said you had to go under a bed or go look in the closet up in the attic or something to find this stuff, or out in somebody's trash can. Now you just pull your phone out, and there it is. So find a way to be accountable to someone with this stuff. 35% of all internet downloads are pornographic. Holy cow, that's over a third. Third of internet downloads are pornographic. And as I was kind of got tickled as I was studying for this, because I'm thinking, you know, somebody's watching what I'm doing. And I thought, I hope they don't know where I go to church. But look at this guy, you know, because you get some weird stuff on there. Let's see, top pornographic search items. And yeah, I'm not even going to talk about that one. Utah, this is strange. Utah, because we all think, you know, Utah's like the squarest, almost the squarest, derogatorily and shape in the nation. Utah has the nation's highest online porn subscription rate per 1,000 of home broadband users of 5.47. So they're not as innocent as we think they are out there. Let's see. 34% of internet users have experienced unwanted exposure to porn, either through pop-up ads, misdirected links, or emails. Now, I've had that before. Download an app, and they'll show one of them commercials on there. Whoa. Let's see. There are 116,000 searches for child pornography every day. That's sick. But you watch the first one, and then it just snowballs. The average age of someone that watches pornography, child sees their first pornographic material at age 11, and that seems like where everybody goes, oh. But I look back through the decades, that's actually average, all the way back to the 50s. At 11 years old, that's the average. 20% of men admit to watching porn online at work, and that's something that came out with the Russia investigation and the campaign meddling. If anybody saw where the FBI agents were getting grilled in Congress and stuff, they pulled their computers, and that was the number one thing that was on their computer was pornography. These are our FBI agents. Food for thought, I guess. Anyway, let's see here. Average porn site visit lasts 6 minutes and 29 seconds. The least popular day of the year for viewing porn is what? Who got a guess for that? The least popular day? Ma'am? I don't know. It's a day, like a theme day. Not Christmas. Not Easter. Thanksgiving. Halloween, that would have been interesting. Thanksgiving is the least popular day of the year for people to look at pornographic material online. The most popular day of the week is what? Sunday. Most popular day, statistically, the most popular day of the week. And this is, remember, we're a country where 64% consider themselves evangelical Christians. And you have to know what a real Christian is to consider yourself an evangelical Christian. That's not, because when I first got saved, if somebody said, "Are you an evangelical Christian?" I thought they were calling me a Catholic or something. Most people don't know. So 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 9, through 11, Paul says, "I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people, not at all meaning the sexually immoral of this world." That's where it gets interesting. Not at all just the sexually immoral of this world, or the greedy or swindlers or idolaters, since then you would need to go out of the world. But I am writing to you not to associate with anyone who bears the name of brother, if he is guilty of sexual immorality or greed, or is an idolater, reviler, drunkard, or swindler, not to even eat with such a one. So apparently they had a problem with people watching pornography on Sundays back then too, because this letter was to the church, right? First Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 3, Paul says again, "For this is the will of God, your sanctification, that you abstain from sexual immorality." And so we've talked about spirits that comes in with pornography and things like that. And it's I'm one of those people that believe in gateway drugs. People say that marijuana is not a gateway drug in the world. But I'm one of those that's a firm believer that it is, because I know my own experience. Who was in Sunday school this week? I had this thing under control at Sunday school, didn't I? There we go. Okay, so we're going to talk about this guy tonight. Okay? Anybody ever heard of Ted Bundy? Kids, y'all ever heard of Ted Bundy? We got 3 or 4 of y'all in here. This guy, what do they call him? The gentleman caller or something like that? He was a handsome fella back in the day. And he was convicted of killing 3 girls in Florida. By the time he got done, he got saved while he was in prison, and he worked with authorities and told them about some of his exploits. He went from Seattle, Washington, all the way across the country down to Florida. Went to Florida because he knew they had the death penalty and they would kill him, and that would help him to stop what he was doing. But he started out with pornography. And this is what I mainly want to talk about tonight is the dangers of pornography and why it's important to ask the question, because I've noticed sometimes, and not so much anymore, but when you do deliverance, if you're uncomfortable to ask a question, ask it. Okay? Don't worry about sitting there with Paige and I prayed with a woman. I think she was 72 years old, and it was a little awkward to ask her about pornography and masturbation. And what we did, she just busted out laughing. She said, "I can't control myself." And it's like it's awkward, but where does it start? Well, that's one thing where Ted Bundy started with was the racks at the magazine racks at the grocery store. So that's how spirit comes in, because he walked by. I mean, how many times, like, you go to CVS or something and you see some of these magazines, and the women are barely even dressed. It's almost X-rated on the cover of the magazine. And so walking by and seeing it, does that mean the spirit's going to come in? No. But when you walk by and you check it out, then you start to fantasize. You start to work it into your imagination and cultivate it. That's when the spirit comes in. Are we crazy for thinking these things? No, because when you listen to his story, and when you do, always forbid the transference of the spirit, which I did on the way in. If it make y'all feel better, we'll watch a video. I'll do it before we do that too. But he talks about his experience of starting out with the softcore pornography and then getting into more and more and more, and then how when it would start, it would just be like he lost control. I mean, how many times do we hear that in deliverance? That somebody says, it becomes a compulsion, whatever it is, whether it's smoking, drinking, beating your wife, beating your husband, whatever it is. It's like you just can't get control of it. So how seriously does God take sexual immorality, pornography, things like that? Remember, Jesus said, if you look at a woman with lust, you've already committed adultery in your heart. That's a hard thing. I mean, that's a hard thing to think about. That's very serious. I mean, that's not like, well, you know, God knows she's beautiful. Yeah, God knows she's beautiful. Women are beautiful. There's nothing wrong with looking at women, but it's how do you look at them? You know what I mean? I'm one, I will tell Paige, if I see somebody that's pretty, I'm like, that's a pretty girl. I mean, because I'm not looking at her going, you know, I'm not, no, I'm not blind. Does that make sense? So it's always a little different, isn't it? Okay, so we've established God takes it seriously, right? So in Leviticus 21, verse 9, it says, and the daughter of any priest, if she profanes herself by whoring, profanes her father, and shall be burned with fire. Thank God we don't live in the Old Testament. Thank you, Jesus, for setting us free from from all these, from the law. I mean, goodness gracious, we talk about that all the time with having illegitimate, children and things like that, sex outside of marriage and having kids. You have to break that curse. If you don't, back in the Old Testament, they got to kill you, the pigs, the horses, everything. Donkeys, don't matter. If you got a pet lizard, it's got to die too. It can carry the curse. And then in Ephesians, I like this one, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 8. I don't think I put that right. That's interesting. I got verse 3, Ephesians 5:3. Or is that 8? I don't know. I got two different numbers on my thing here. But sexual immorality and all impurity or covetousness must not be named among you as is proper among the saints. So we talked about anger coming in, unforgiveness, bitterness, hatred, violence, aggressiveness. And this is all on your sheet. Revenge, murder, temper tantrum. So when you're talking to a candidate and you're going through your personal hindrance inventory, look at it. Ask them if they've circled. Most people won't circle pornography on there. They'll just kind of go by it and say, I don't ask them, are you hooked on pornography? Have you ever watched pornography? Because yes, if they have, something's there. It has to be. Come out. Critters comes out, right? That's it. When we went to Alabama, Paige to get tickled with me. About every 2 miles, Critters comes out. But anyway, the best illustration I ever heard was when Pastor George did a sermon. He was talking about a cat. Cat got in the house, and the cat opened up the screen. The cat opened up a window here or there, and it lets another one in. You don't realize it because it was such a sweet cat, but it lets in nastier things. Wish I had that one because, man, I'd put it up for sale. But anyway, I think it made a good impact on me. But so it lets in. So what I've learned in the last couple of weeks after studying this stuff is if somebody's watched pornography, of course, I'm going to ask them about all the other things, lust and fornication. My favorite is they'll circle like adultery and fornication, but they won't. What would you ask for if somebody circled lust? So like if I'm working with Paige and she circles lust or excuse me, fornication, what are you going to search for? What are you going to ask her? But she didn't circle lust. What do? You just go ahead and circle it for them. Hey, I'm going to circle lust, okay? Well, I ain't never had a problem with lust. Well, have you had sex outside of marriage? Yeah, well, how do you think it happened? What led to it? Was it lust or you just were bored? I mean, which was it? If you were just bored, then that's something else we got to work on, right? So, but like I said, don't be afraid to ask the question, because people just don't think. We don't think as we fill these sheets out and we go through our interview, we don't, just fornication, you had sex outside of marriage. Well, did you lust after? I mean, a lot of people go, no. I'm going, that's another story altogether. But something else that I've learned to look for when we were doing deliverance, and a woman was, she had married a fella, and he was very much into pornography. He was very much into then acting out the pornography. And he was also into some New Age Illuminati kind of stuff. And if you kind of look into that, it'll take you back. We talked about Sunday school. It'll take you back to Aleister Crowley. And so we called up Spirit of Sex Magic. And one of the girls' favorite bands back in the 90s was the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Anybody ever heard of Red Hot Chili Peppers? Okay. Their debut album was Blood Sugar Sex Magic. And the way it was spelled, let's see if I can get this pen to write now. That's how magic's spelled on it. And I didn't think anything about it. I never did. And when we were studying about Aleister Crowley and stuff, I still didn't catch it until a song came on the radio the other day. As I was scanning through, I heard the dude's voice, and I used to listen to him, so I immediately turned it. I don't want to listen to it. I don't want to let that back in. And so I pulled up because some of the words started going through my head, and I said, I want to pull up the lyrics. So I pulled up the lyrics to one of the songs to see exactly what he was saying. And, of course, it goes back to some of the teachings of Aleister Crowley, some of the things that things I learned about that he would teach you. There it was in the song, but this is how he spelled magic, M-A-G-I-K. Not with a C, how we do. And that was, it was that flashing light there. And so, anyway, man, I went on a rabbit trail on that one. Sorry, y'all. But I want to run to Proverbs real quick, chapter 6, verse 32. He commits adultery lacks sense. That's pretty simple. God's word's always right. So whatever you want to check with that when you're doing deliverance is great. He who does it destroys himself. So there's a whole nother category down there at the bottom on the right of the sheet, or in the middle. It says, I got what about rebellion, pride, stubbornness, disobedience, lawlessness, witchcraft? Those things are bound to be there as well when you have somebody with pornography. Check it. It might not be, but it's worth to check. I was telling somebody the other day, if you go to the dentist because you have one hurt tooth, you want to look at all of them, right? You take your car to the mechanic, you're about to drive across the country, you better tell them to look at everything. Don't just check the oil, man. Check all my fluids. Well, so with the pornography, and here's another thing. Ask them too, what about your husband? What about your wife? Are they watching pornography? Because what is it going to do to the wife? What is it going to do to the husband? Now all of a sudden, so if the husband's watching pornography, do you think the wife feels pretty? Do you think she feels sexy like she should for her husband? No. She's not going to. She's not going to feel good enough. So here's a whole nother slew of things you have to go after. I'm ugly. I'm nasty. All these things. One problem that we found with, we were talking with a young lady yesterday, and she talked about a friend of hers in school that became a sexual deviant from watching pornography. And he actually tried to drug her and was going to attempt to rape her, but could not perform. Because why? Because his mind was so messed up from this stuff that he couldn't function unless he was, I would imagine, acting out what he had seen in the video, but still couldn't then. And so that's another danger of it for men and for women as well, that there's not going to be, it takes away the godly order of the relationship, the marriage relationship, as far as those things go. But then you bring in control, because it escalates. They're not going to just start. So I never got into pornography. Not that I'm a saint. That curse, that part of our family curse, just kind of went to one of my siblings, whereas for me it was the hippie went to me. But and it's just like a drug. You start out with something small. Very rarely does somebody start out using drugs, smoking crack. And like that with pornography, they don't just jump right into the violent, hardcore stuff. They start out with the newspaper, or not the newspaper, but the magazine rack at the drugstore with the barely dressed women. And that's what this guy did, Ted Bundy. So anyway, he traveled the country in the 70s, and he was rape and kill women. He posed himself as a guy, he would have crutches, he'd have cast on, leg braces on, whatever. Oh, I can't hardly get in my car. Or see a woman on the side of the road, offer her a ride. And it was, when you listen to a lot of his story, it almost sounds like he's acting out a movie. And that's what he was doing. And he talks about that in his interviews, that he would act out what he had seen in the movies that he liked watching, because that would just kind of it was like he was becoming the character. That's that demon. That's, the spirit that transferred from that movie to him. And so the reason I want to talk about Ted Bundy is because you never know when somebody comes for deliverance, it might be the next one. It might be somebody that's right on the verge of becoming this guy all over again. This isn't something that's, just for this generation that we go, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. This has been going on since the dawn of time. And so anyway, if I can get my thing here to cooperate, we will I got a little video. It's an interview he did with Dr. James Dobson. Anybody ever heard of Dr. Dobson? Okay.
These kinds of things. Now, I really want to understand that. You had gone about as far as you could go in your own fantasy life with printed material. And you made or printed and video or film
magazines, what have you.
And then there was the urge to take that little step or big step over to a physical event.
And it happens. It happened in stages, gradually. It doesn't necessarily, not to me at least, happen overnight. My experience with, let's say, pornography generally, but with pornography that deals on a violent level with sexuality, is that once you become addicted to it, and I look at this as a kind of addiction, like other kinds of addiction, I would keep looking for more potent, more explicit, more graphic kinds of material. Like an addiction, you keep craving something which is harder, something which gives you a greater sense of excitement, until you reach the point where the pornography only goes so far. You reach that jumping off point where you begin to wonder if maybe actually doing it will give you that which is beyond just reading about it or looking at it.
How long did you stay at that point before you actually assaulted someone?
Well, yeah, you see, that is a very delicate point in my own development. And we're talking about having reached the point or a gray area that surrounded that point over a course of
you don't remember
years.
How long that
Well, I would say a couple of years. And what I was dealing with there were very strong inhibitions against criminal behavior and violent behavior that had been conditioned into me, bred into me in my environment, in my neighborhood, in my church, in my school. Things which said, no, this is wrong. I mean, even to think of it is wrong, but certainly to do it is wrong. And I'm on that edge, and you might say the last vestiges of restraint. The barriers to actually doing something were being tested constantly and assailed through the kind of fantasy life that was fueled largely by what citizen thinks about this. But I've lived in prison for a long time now, and I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography. There's no question about it. The FBI's own study on serial homicide shows that the most common interest among serial killers.
And as you would imagine, there's tremendous cynicism about you on the outside, and I suppose for good reason. I'm not sure that there's anything that you could say that people would believe. Some people would believe. And yet, you told me last night, and I've heard this through our mutual friend John Tanner, that you have accepted the forgiveness of Jesus Christ and are a follower and a believer in Him. Do you draw strength from that as you approach these final hours?
I do. I can't say that
it's going to
being in the valley of the shadow of death is something that I've become all that.
Absolutely overwhelming.
I can remember back in the early 70s, there were studies showing that children tended to resort to violent solutions to their problems as the result of seeing violent behavior depicted on television and in the movies. Have those studies been upgraded? I mean, now we're talking about a general thing that's available to us all. Anybody can turn on the television. There are murders and stabbings and killings and brutalities of all sorts on TV every day.
Yeah. There are studies, one done at UCLA by Malamuth and Fishbeck, which took college sophomores, males. They showed them violent pornography, and then they asked them the question, if you had an opportunity to rape a woman with impunity, you would never get caught, would you do it? 51% said yes. Now, this is a cross-section of university sophomores. So there are studies like that. As I said before, they're not absolutely definitive, but common sense tells you there's a connection between the two.
Wow. That's something, ain't it? So how about that study? 51% of college sophomores that were interviewed, when they asked them, if you could have the opportunity to rape a woman with total impunity, that you would not be prosecuted, would you do it? And yeah. What? Yeah, that was 1989. So kids, that was how great TV was back in the day. So be thankful for what y'all have now. When I was your age. But anyway, that's amazing. But one thing that just struck me was what he said. He said, I've been in prison a very long time. I think he'd been in prison about 10 years at that point, 10 or 12 years. And he said, what did he say? Without exception. Without exception. And you couldn't really tell it in the video way it copied over. He was crying. I was just crying. This is a man that's all of a sudden become remorseful. Because why? He got saved. Now he's realizing the weight of what he's done. And that was the night before he died. He was put to death the next morning. But he said, without exception, they all have an addiction to pornography. And where does it start? Does it start with the violent stuff? Usually not. I mean, I'm sure it does for some people, but it starts very calm, just a little magazine, a peep show or whatever they call it. I don't know. But this is a man that's in prison, and he's telling what he's experiencing with the people that he knows in prison is that this is where they started. And that's what led to them committing crime. That's what led to them doing other things. So anyway, one more scripture now. I want to open it up so y'all can talk about it. 1 Corinthians 6:16, do you not know that he who is joined to a prostitute becomes one body with her? For as it is written, the two will become one flesh. Do you really want to do that? That's what I say is, I'm good. I don't want nothing you got. And so that to me is enough motivation to stay away from it. But it's something that we have to, as ministers, we have to really, really kind of pounce on, because all kind of things come in from this. And so we need to know that as parents, grandparents, friends, whatever, we need to know these things, because we need to know the dangers of it for ourselves to stay away from it. But we need to know what's going on with that person that's sitting in front of me. That to me is one of the biggest things we need to know, what's going through their mind. And this sheds a whole new light to me as far as going after anger, revenge, murder, things like that, death. So anyway, anybody want to jump in? Anybody got a question, comment, concern? Oh, that's good. Otherwise, I'll pull up another video.
No, you're talking about age 11, but if you look at nowadays, it's 4 and 5 years old. It's being introduced to it with video games and also with music videos that are on TV. I mean, they're just.
Oh yeah, hey. Well, when you think about music videos, video games. Now remember, that's just the average. That's the 2018 average. So that could be anywhere from 4 years old to 15 years old, and you meet in the middle around 11, I guess. But I grew up in the 80s. So, young, like 8, 9 years old. Anybody remember the band Whitesnake? Their videos on MTV were just shy of being a full-blown pornographic movie. I mean, it was terrible. And that's what I watched, man. It was the first concert I ever went to. And I was 7, 8 years old watching this stuff. And it's like, what? But we checked to see if there was, I think something did come out from that stuff when I went through deliverance at one time. Recently, because it came into my mind, Paige, check for this, and sure enough, there was something there. But you have to really be vigilant. But the thing is that, like the young man we prayed for, we had the real fun deliverance, the exuberant deliverance that day. We started talking about video games. What kind of games you been playing, buddy? And all of a sudden, he starts manifesting. So you get a kid, adults anymore even too. What kind of games do you play? What kind of games? Tell me about the games you play. What's in those games? Find out. I mean, don't do a lot of research. You let a spirit in probably. But always forbid the transference of a spirit before you do. Yes, ma'am.
Also in cartoons. In cartoons.
Yeah, been around us. Yeah, cartoons, and everybody goes, the cartoons today are terrible. It's just awful. I'm not sure the time period. Anybody ever seen Betty? Was it Betty Boop? Is that the one? Oh man! So it's been around. It's been around as long as since the dawn of time. But yeah, so I mean, it's things we really got to watch.
I was just gonna say, we want to make you hold it. I was just gonna say that so let's talk about what do you do when you do have a child that has been exposed to that or is exhibiting some signs. You can pretend that nothing's happened, and we're blessed because we know it's spiritual. And so you start teaching the kids, look here, if you have been exposed to this, it pops up. I mean, like if they say that they've never seen it, they're lying. If they have been on the internet ever for any length of time, it has popped up. Even if they hadn't clicked on anything wrong, it's popped up. And so you just tell them, if these images go through your mind, it's spiritual. You don't have to keep it. And if it stays, it's going to intensify. So, talk to your kids about it.
Another thing to ask for too is bestiality, sex with animals, necrophilia, sex with dead people. Ask. I mean, you never know. What I say, if the stuff is there, if that's there, ask about all of it. The only thing that's going to hurt is their pride. You're just asking a question. You know what I mean? Anybody got anything else? Anybody else?
Pastor talked about porn before, and he was saying, if you find porn, go for homosexuality because he probably got that. And when he said that, it clicked on me, or in my mind, I should say, that when a person watches porn, they may be watching the woman, but there's always a man in the background. And so since that clicked, I've been checking, and I always explain to the person, I'm going to call this out, but that doesn't mean that you are homosexual, because it's important they know that, Yeah. But it almost always comes out.
Oh, yeah. That's good. That's good. Well, I like to tell them, too, is I say, I learned this from Pastor George, that doesn't make you a homosexual. And they're like, you see the relief come over them. And we tell them before deliverance, none of this stuff defines you. And I say, I see you circled suicide. And they go, I say, have you killed yourself yet? And they'll go, no. Okay, see, it doesn't define who you are. It doesn't mean you've done it, obviously, because you're still sitting here.
I was just thinking about that story of the girl that was taken in California, and that they kept her in the backyard, you remember? And what was her name? Yeah, for 18 years. But she, I don't know if it was Elizabeth Smart. I can't remember what her name is. But anyway, she said she absolutely hates pornography because that made her captivity that much more worse, because he would get all hopped up on meth, and then he would feed on that pornography and abuse her terribly. And she just felt like that if he wouldn't have had, access to that it wouldn't have been as bad.
Casey something or something, I forget. Yeah, that was, and that's sad. And that's guy got messed up on his meth, watches pornography, and then he says, "Ooh," that demon starts clicking in his brain. And one thing when I watched the Ted Bundy interview, he talked about that. He said it was like something overcame him, and that he would kind of not have control. It was like the fantasy became real, and it was someone else, another entity. That was funny. The choices of words that he uses, an entity, came up and like used his body to act these things out. And it was afterwards, after everything was done, like immediately after the person was killed or dismembered, whatever ended up happening. Then it was like he realized what he had done. And he said it would drive him crazy for like a day, and then the spirit would come right back, and he had to go do it again and again and again and again. And that's how he ended up. I think it was in Colorado. It was after Utah. He got arrested in Utah, but he escaped, and he ended up in Colorado, and he got arrested on some kind of small charge, and he was in the jail. and he called his attorney and back in Washington, and the attorney said, "Man, you better be glad you're not in Florida, because if you're in Florida, they put you to death." And that's how he ended up going to Florida, because he knew he couldn't control it. So he was starting to have a little bit of remorse. He was still there, but that demon was up, manifesting, destroyed his life, and they say over about 100-something families' lives. He killed that many people, and yeah, and it's sad. I mean, it is. It's very sad what a spirit can do. And so, to me, this is things I take into consideration when I'm doing an interview with somebody. When I'm doing deliverance, I'm thinking about people like this. I'm not thinking about, I just watched a little bit of pornography, no big deal. Well, you know, what is it, like 1 in 9, I think, ends up acting out what they see in the pornography? And so if it's 1 in 9, is this the one? Is this number 2, 3, 4? Is this the one that could end up just going crazy with it? I don't know. Anybody else? Y'all don't be shy. I'll keep talking then. So what about like the emotional things, like victim? You know, down at the bottom in the middle of your sheet, you have the victim stuff. You got, what is it, self-pity? You think that would come in as well? It's funny when you really think about it. You could take pornography and you could just about probably get everything off that sheet. You could just circle the whole thing right off pornography. Whether it's something that is done to you, you know, like it's projected to you, like self-pity, loneliness. Because, I mean, how many times, and this is something I know Pastor talked about it too when we were talking about the spirit of masturbation one time. That robs the spouse. You see what I mean? That robs the spouse of, yeah, the marriage, what does Bishop Williams call it? The love chamber. There you go. I love Bishop Williams. But anyway, and so that's what these things are doing. So if there's a problem with pornography at our house and I'm watching it, we'll just say Paige is watching. We'll pick on her. And she's watching it. Well, it's going to make me feel like, man, she don't love me. You know what I mean? And then it's going to make me feel like I'm just lonely because she don't want nothing to do with me. She ain't got her excitement watching that TV or her phone or whatever. And then you go down to doubt and hopelessness, unworthiness, worthlessness. Then I think at the very bottom of that category is divorce. I hope at that point, my Lord. No, I'm just kidding. You need to work on it. You bring them for deliverance, get that demon cast out. But and then I can project these things right back to her, because then maybe she will want to, be close or whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm good. And now it's going right back to her. So it's a vicious, never-ending cycle. And we already got, like, if you went to the back of the sheet, you see the occult stuff. The sex magic, you get into that as well, because I don't know. A lot of times, this is where they don't get these ideas out of thin air. Hold on, they can't.
Wouldn't rape be considered that too?
Rape is and Pastor George had an interesting. I'm gonna let you want to tell the one about the spirit of rape that was in somebody. Okay, I'll tell. He don't remember. And see, that's what's so funny about deliverance. He did the deliverance, but he doesn't remember. And if you've been through deliverance, most of us will tell you, not that you're not real awesome, but we probably won't remember you, ma'am. Okay. Anyway, a woman came for deliverance, and she had never been raped, but it was very close to being raped. And there was a spirit of rape in there. Even though she had not been raped, there was a spirit of a trauma. You know what I mean? And so it was able to get the spirit out. So yes, a lot of time you get into the violent pornography, it's like a rape scene. And then, you see, you'd want to check for that. I mean, check for molestation, all that kind of stuff. It's bad news. It's bad news, but it's something that has plagued societies, I imagine, for a very, very long time. I mean, I imagine back in Bible times they didn't have a television, obviously, but I'm sure that there was women of the night or whatever. I mean, they call it the world's oldest profession, but that's not. The world's oldest profession is gardening. Or maybe that's a hobby. I don't know, either way, either one of them. Yes, sir.
it's obvious that they're all interrelated. But what I want to bring up is that we run into a large percentage of men and women who have been molested. Yeah. And if they've been molested, go after the spirit of homosexuality, because it's usually there.
It's as with our experience, mine and Paige's experience in deliverance, I would say 90% of people that we get for deliverance have been molested. And out of 9 out of 10 have been molested, and out of those 9, only one of them circled on the sheet or would tell us that they were molested. You have to ask them. So 90% have been molested, and 1% will tell you, if that. All right, you got something to this?
You know why I think that they don't circle it or tell it? Because a lot of times I feel like they don't circle stuff on the sheet because they feel like they've dealt with it. So it's not defining them, and it's not something that they think about or have to worry about, but it's kind of just pushed down. And so that they push the demon down thinking that the demon's gone.
And two, remember that spirit does not want to tell you, the minister, yeah, I'm here,
And a lot of times people don't want to tell you that they've had sexual trauma like rape or being molested because they feel very guilty and shameful of that too. And with men, a lot of times it's pride. Yeah. It really hurts them.
Yeah, we had a family that years ago that came for deliverance, and it went down through every child: molestation, rape, sexual abuse. Started with it at the top, it worked its way all the way through. And I'm talking to the parent, and the parent's like, well, I don't know about curses and all this stuff. I said, what you just told me, each one of your children did this to the other one. That's an obvious curse. It just comes right down the line. Anyway.
Another thing with sexual abuses and molestation is that, the person sitting in front of you could have been molested, but that's usually the person who's molesting someone else. We don't have people tell us that a lot, but someone did tell us that they had done that too. But I'm sure that there's a very much higher percentage of people who have continued it on, just like you're saying.
Oh, yeah. That's good. I'm glad you said that. And that's something we, as a minister, you ask, have you ever molested anybody else? They said, if it makes you uncomfortable, ask it. I mean, all they can do is tell you no. Has everybody in this room been told no before? Everybody in this room been made uncomfortable before? Or done something that make yourself uncomfortable? I raise both hands. I raise my feet, throw my shoes up in there. I mean, but with the sexual abuse of others, it's what they know. It's what was done to them. It becomes what is that to them. That's normal. That's what you do. And so it's a great thing to ask somebody.
Then when you was talking about the people that has been molested and raped, that's where a lot of the gays and the lesbians, that's where it's come in at. Because one day I began to pray and ask God, I said, well, why some of these kids are so big? And he said, not all of them, but the majority of them been molested and raped. And so when that spirit comes in, I guess they don't have no desire for a man or woman. And that's why a lot of them, you talk to some of the gays and lesbians walking around, and that's what they'll tell you, they've been raped.
And that's something that's it's very interesting to think about. I mean, a lot of homosexuals, they have been molested, they have been raped, and it's amazing because really think about when you look at we'll start with a man that's a homosexual. They're usually very effeminate. I mean, they're and by the rape, that the perpetrator of the rape, the rapist has turned them into a woman. I mean, when you look at them and you watch them, they act like a darn woman. Most of them act more feminine than most women that you know. And then you look at the ones that turn out to be lesbians, the women, most of them look more macho than most men that you ever know, because they were turned, it just perverted their sense of normal, their being normal. And so, it's an obvious spirit, and that's a hard one to break on people, because it's such a way of life for them that they don't know how to live without being that way.
Is it all right if I agree to disagree?
About what?
What you just said.
Yeah.
Okay, because I don't believe that everybody that gets raped becomes homosexual.
I wasn't saying that.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't say that.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't think people got raped that are heterosexual got children. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
No. We'd have a whole lot. As many homosexuals as we have in the nation right now, God forbid, we'd have a whole lot more. No. It just happens. I mean, that's a common denominator with people that are homosexual, is that they were raped. That's like one of the, ask them, and most of them will tell you they were molested, one or the other. And a lot of times it wasn't just one time, it was prolonged. But anyway, so it's right on time. If y'all want to stay and we'll talk more, we can, but I got to go ahead and pray and dismiss. So thank everybody for coming. And we'll be back, the 19th? We'll take off 2 Wednesdays. And then we'll be back. But anyway, Father, in the name of Jesus, Lord, I thank you for today. God, I thank you for getting everybody here safe, getting them home safe, Father. Help us take what we learn and apply it to our lives, apply it to ministry, God. And Father, in the name of Jesus, just bless these that are here. Bless their coming and going, God. And we love you. We thank you for what you're going to do. In Jesus' name.